If you were like me, watching the draft from Thursday to Saturday, the only thing you could say was, "What the?" No idea what was going on with a lot of those teams. And that's the thing what we do in the fantasy world is we make plans, and then they're shattered to pieces by the GMs, the players, and everything. And that's why we love it. Here at Fantasy R&D, if you're new here, which you are, this is the first ever video. We're gonna be trying to break down everything and everything with fantasy football, including the NFL draft, which is where we're going to be starting today. First of all, we just got to say, what the, with Ty Simpson. He is the honorary bozo bonehead pick uh, of the year. In all reality, though, this was Tyler Shuck. This was Bo Nix, though. Every time it was like, what are we doing? Why are we not taking Shador? Why are we taking Bo Nix in the first round? So maybe the Rams know something we don't. Can't say I agree with the pick though, especially believe it was 13, which is ridiculous. You could have got him in the second round. You may have even got him in the early third. Um, also, Ruben Bain falling, I think, to 15. Also, Caleb's down fell, maybe to 20, I believe. A lot of interesting plays going on in the NFL. Not sure I agree with them. Also, Deshaun Stribling, first overall of the second round. When there's people like Zachariah Branch, there's people like Denzel Boston still on the board. Just what are we doing, guys? I can't see the world where any of this makes sense. So getting into kind of what we're really interested in here with fantasy's perspectives. First off, we got Jeremiah Love going at number 3 to the Cardinals. Not exactly what I was imagining. Honestly, I was thinking we'd have something more along the lines of Titans Jeremiah Love, which I really love the fit of. Seeing him go to the Cardinals will be interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of kind of Ashton Genty and the results that we got in the Raiders, year last year of Ashton Genty was pretty good. Second half of the year, first half he really struggled, but he kind of turned it on. But the Raiders really sucked, and they ended up getting the first overall pick, which is maybe a 3D chess move by the Arizona GM, saying maybe we're just gonna tank for next year and get Arch Manning and throw him in here as well, or whoever ends up going one of one. I have no idea. Jeremiah Smith, maybe they're taking him, or whoever they want to bolster their defense next year. Can't say it's going to be an amazing year for Jeremiah Love. I mean, look, he's still an amazing running back talent. I think he's more talented than Ashton Genty. He could still end up very well being a top 10 running back fantasy wise this year for you. So I wouldn't shy away from him too much, but definitely not the ideal spot that we would have loved to see him at. Going then to the Tennessee Titans, that ended up, as you could tell, I mean, you saw it in their, in the eyes. They were looking to take Jeremiah Love whenever he fell off the board. They said, well, we got to get somebody for the offense, and that ended up being Carnell Tate. I think I really support this move for the franchise. They wanted to go, bolster their, young quarterback and get him a weapon, and that's what they did in Carnell Tate. I think he is the safest option in this draft class as far as the wide receivers go, kind of the big three of Tate, Lemon, and Tyson. He's definitely the safest, and I think he's going to produce with the Titans. If you believe in Cam Ward, I go all out in this guy. You're probably in, dynasty redrafts. You're getting him at 102, right behind Jeremiah Love, and I totally agree with that. I think he's very talented. I think, it's a young offense. I wouldn't say he's going to a Chiefs or Bills, offense, and it's going to be absolutely electric. But he's going to have his working partner in Wandale Robinson in Tennessee, which I kind of like. I think Wandale's kind of your PPR merchant. He's going to work that midfield. He's going to just going to rack up the targets, and then Carnell Tate's going to be able to stretch the field for Cam Ward, who honestly is kind of a gunslinger quarterback, uh, which is kind of the ideal fit for Carnell Tate. So I think big things to come here. Getting on with Jordan Tyson here, I honestly am a massive fan of the selection. I kind of thought that they were going to go with an offensive piece, and my favorite pick for New Orleans was Jordan Tyson. I think with the injury scares that he has had going on, not really getting to play a lot in college, that's kind of, I guess, was maybe a little, for fantasy managers, making them a little bit wary. But I think landing with the Saints, really a young blooming offense, similar to the Titans, but in every way better. They have Tyler Shucker, which is I think a very capable quarterback. Chris Olave, who's similar to Wanda Robinson, just I think maybe a little older. I don't even know. They could be the same age. Not sure, but just a PPR merchant. and Jordan Tyson's going to be able to be that guy of just like, you know, working directly with Olave, uh, with a gunslinger quarterback too, like Tyler Shuck. Uh, I think there's really room for a great season with Jordan Tyson if he's able to stay healthy. I think this is going to be honestly, I wouldn't say a steal of the draft because you're probably getting him at 103 in your dynasty redrafts. But you're going to be happy you took Jordan Tyson long term. Going over to the Jets now, not really sure what we were thinking here. I understand maybe going with one of these two guys, but going with both Kenyon Sadiq and Omar Cooper Jr., going, you know what? We need, not just to ruin the fantasy potential of one elite offensive weapon, but two. I think Kenyon Sadiq is definitely the more talented of these two, I guess, receivers. Even though Kenyon Sadiq is a tight end, I think he's going to be, an absolute freak in the NFL, and I think the ceiling to do that for a tight end, or the bar to be like, oh yeah, he's a freak, is a lot lower than for a wide receiver. But if you think about all the weapons that New York has now, I mean, they're gonna have Kenyon Sadiq, Omar Cooper Jr. They're gonna have Garrett Wilson. They have Brees Hall, Braylon Allen if he ever comes back. And then who's throwing it to him? I don't even know. I think it's Geno Smith right now. I'm not even sure if they took a quarterback later on. I'm only covering rounds 1 through 3 right now. I'll probably get into the entirety of the draft and my outlooks further on in a future video, so be on the lookout for that. But as of right now, I just really don't see any real potential uh, for the Jets being a better offensive team, or NFL standing wise, from these two draft picks. I think Kenyon Sadiq has the potential of being, an elite prospect. He could get you maybe 15, maybe 12, 10 points on average a week. He might get like 5, 6 touchdowns in the year, and you'd be satisfied. But with Omar Cooper Jr. there as well, I mean, there's only so many targets to go around, and to have to feed 4 guys, I think that's really gonna, cap one of these guys' ceiling. One of these guys is just not gonna be able to produce. I mean, they already have Garrett Wilson, who is, he's a bona fide wide receiver one. None of these guys are passing him up at least anytime soon. I think Kenyon Sadiq, maybe could work better in the offense just because, rest in peace, Mason Taylor. He had a great run, one season of being a couple weeks here and there. Maybe you can flex him. Maybe you can kind of pick him up off waivers and slot him in for play. But now with Kenyon City coming in, an elite ball catcher, I think it's over for him. It's lights out. So we'll see what this New York offense, what it's actually going to look like. Not super high hopes that both of these guys are going to be fantasy relevant. I think if you're betting on one of them, it's going to be Kenyon Sadiq. Definitely going to be taken a lot higher in your dynasty leagues and your redraft leagues as well. So just be on the lookout for that. Getting on with the Eagles now. Again, another team that took 2 offensive pieces in the first 2 rounds. Mekhi Lemon in the first, I think, at 120, and then Stowers somewhere in the second. Um, again, I really don't understand what's going on here. The Eagles, they're essentially playing small ball offense. They have Devonta Smith, who is, I think, what, 5'11", 6 foot. Mekhi Lemon, 5'11", maybe 6 foot on a good day. Dallas Goedert's on a 1-year deal, so they decided to bring Eli Stowers in, going to be the big body. But Jalen Hurts, he's a short guy too. I mean, I guess Eli Stowers is going to be your big boy. You don't believe in Dallas Goedert anymore, even though the dude's a freak. He's been putting up numbers since I was a child, and he's going to continue to get his own. I mean, last year their bread and butter in the red zone was just Dallas Goedert, fade or push up the middle. I don't see the team straying away from that anytime soon. I could see maybe instead of using Dallas Goedert, I mean, they invested heavy capital into Eli Stowers, so I think Stowers takeover for Goddard is coming soon. It's the same thing that we're seeing in Baltimore. I think with Mark Andrews getting old. I think he's got 1 year left on his deal. Dallas Goedert's out the door. They got to reload, and I think that's what they're trying to do in Stowers, which I really love the pick, honestly. Um, Not sure I say it's the best fit, but I think Stowers has a potential to be a great tight end asset. Fantasy managers also kind of at a way cheaper price than what you're going to get for Kenyon Sadiq that we just talked about with New York. However, I think him going to Philadelphia is definitely going to bolster his stock a lot. So you're going to be on the lookout for that. He's probably going to be taken, honestly, probably in the late first round of 12-man league for a redraft or for a dynasty, excuse me. So be on the lookout for that. As far as Makai Lemon goes, I really don't know how he slots in with Devonta Smith. I was kind of really expecting them to get kind of just a big body guy like Denzel Boston or maybe just Eli Stowers and just call it and say, we got a big guy, we got a small guy, that's all we need. Having Makai Lemon, it's almost like the same archetype of Devonta Smith, of just like, you know, two small guy, fast, quick, gonna get you with the footwork, not necessarily like they're gonna go up and beat you on the catch. Um, so I really don't understand, what the move is here. Obviously we know AJ Brown is out the door. I mean, taking two offensive weapons. I mean, come on, sayonara. He's already a New England Patriot in my eyes. But Makai Lemon coming in here, Devonta Smith is still the wide receiver one. Maybe there's a world where we can get a 1A, 1B, and Lemon's at 1B. I don't think he's passing up Devonta Smith anytime soon, at least not this year. Definitely still a great asset for fantasy managers, but you have to remember too, with the Philadelphia offense, they may be throwing the ball like 25 times a game, and 10 of those are going to go to Lemon, five of them go to Stowers, you know, five go to Devonta Smith, or maybe it's flip flop, 10 go to Smith, five go to Lemon, five go to Stowers, they're going to lean on Saquon heavily as well. So, I mean, this is really almost like, I wouldn't say it's a bad landing spot because this is a Super Bowl contending team, but as far as fantasy outlook, you know, you have to kind of lower that ceiling a little bit. This isn't like a gunslinging going crazy, like or always going to be down. You have to be getting touchdowns like the Cowboys were or the Bengals are. They're going to want to run the ball a lot. They take it really slow. They're going to want to do the tush push. That's not going away anytime soon, at least this year. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if Makai Lemon, out of the top three of Tate, Tyson, and Lemon, he was the third one to go off of your boards and dynasty leagues. Still a great asset to have, and I think he's got a great, bright future ahead of him. Um, but yeah, definitely with Jalen Hurts under center, there is, wouldn't say, concern to be had, but a little bit of caution from fantasy managers. Man, it is just team after team of players, like two offensive weapons going to the same team, and you hate to see it being Cleveland Browns. The Browns tax is extremely real, which is such a shame because both of these players are guys that I really love as assets that you could own potentially. I think they honestly work very well together. I really think if you take the names of the players, you take the helmets off, take the logos off, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, they're gonna have Harold Fannin, Jerry Judy if he decides he wants to show up every now and again. I wouldn't bet on it. Quinshawn Judkins, Shador Sanders, which wouldn't say he's gonna be elite, but he's gonna be serviceable. So and then top five defense in the league. Give me that team and say, yeah, what do you think? How many wins? How relevant? How fantasy productive they're going to be? You'd be like, oh wow, this is like definitely playoff contention team. Like definitely, maybe they're going to be making it to maybe Super Bowl. I mean, not Super Bowl, but at least win the first round of playoffs. Then you go, oh, it's the Cleveland Browns. And say, okay, they're going to win 5 games, and then that's it. No one cares about them. It's such a shame. Out of these two, who do I think is going to be more relevant? Definitely Casey Concepcion. I think he works very well with Harold Fairdin, which is kind of what they already have going. Honestly, I could kind of see like the David Njoku Harold Fairdin battle going on a little bit with Boston of just that big guy, and on the field. I wouldn't say he's necessarily tight end level, but they're kind of the same archetype. Whereas Casey Concepcion is going to be that kind of shifty, middle of the field PPR merchant that we love to see, and I think Shador Sanders is going to love that as well. That's where he looks a lot. So I'd really be looking out for Casey Concepcion. I think people are going to be sleeping on him just because of the Brown tax, which is definitely something to be wary of. But I honestly think you get him for cheap because of this, and I wouldn't be. Don't say I'd be scared. I would be hesitant to invest, but in this 2026 draft class, fantasy wise, I wouldn't. It's not really much for liking. Concepcion's definitely on the better end of that. I think he graded out really well at the combine. I think he's actually kind of a sleeper that people are not really talking about as well. I think he has really potential to be one of the lone shining stars of this class. You know, 2 years from now, I'll be like, dude, Casey Concepcion like dropped like to the Browns. I cannot believe he went ahead of, or behind Lemon, or whatever it may be. I no disrespect to those guys. I hope everyone has a great career, but I wouldn't be surprised, if Shador is able to turn it on if the Browns win 7 games. And maybe put that out there in the universe. I could see Casey Concepcion being a wide receiver too. I wouldn't be afraid to say that. Denzel Boston, I think there's definitely room for him. I wouldn't say like Casey Concepcion's like by far and away way better, but Denzel Boston, I think, is just more of that big guy kind of already have on the team, so it's going to be a little bit more of a competition between him and Fannin. And same thing with the Jets. It's just like there's a lot of mouths to feed, and you got Shador Sanders, whipping that thing. There's only so much to go around. You also have Quinshawn Judkins, which is a blossoming star, top 20 running back in the league, and I would be ecstatic having him in my dynasty teams. As long as he avoids injury. I think he got a little banged up last year. Yeah, so be on the lookout for these two guys. But remember, Brown's tax is real. All right, probably getting to the most interesting part of the first round. Darian Price going to 32 to the Seahawks. What can you say? Honestly, I know I think Peter Schrager is his name, had him in the mock draft, and he's kind of like the draft wizard, you could say. I honestly did not believe when I saw. I was like, no way, this dude goes in the first round. Like this is Jeremiah Love and whoever else kind of class. And lo and behold, the Seahawks said, we're gonna reload. Like we do not care, who he is, where he's coming from. I know he was the number 2 on Notre Dame, which is absolutely ridiculous that the 2 top running backs off the board coming from the exact same college. The Seahawks didn't care, and honestly, I'm not sure if I would care either. I think, look, okay, what we saw last year with the Seahawks was that they love to run kind of a communal backfield, just like splitting snaps, and it was probably the most frustrating things for fantasy managers to watch. Of just like if you drafted Kenneth Walker, maybe third, fourth round of a redraft league, and just he's going absolutely nuclear. He'll run like 50 yards and then get in the red zone. They're like, oh, give it to Charbonnet, give it to Charbonnet, and he's gonna steal your touchdown. Kenneth Walker was probably one of the most infuriating players to have last year. And then you got to the playoffs and it just got even worse. And now he's this reigning Super Bowl MVP and he's going to a contending Chiefs team with Patty Mahomes coming back off an ACL tear. I would be afraid if you're going to be facing up against him anytime soon. But anyways, the Seattle Seahawks deciding to reload here with Jerry and Price, I think really interesting. I don't think, look, he's nothing compared to Jeremiah Love. There's a reason why he was sitting behind him. Uh, but you got to think this is a first round draft capital that the Seattle Seahawks team is giving to Jadarian Price. I wouldn't say that he's going to be the workhorse back. I think they're still going to try to implement maybe Charbonnet once he gets back off that ACL uh, into the offense. I think that's just kind of what they like to do. I mean, look, they just won the Super Bowl. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Um, but I would honestly, I'm looking to invest here. I think he's going to go mid round of the first, in your dynasty leagues for your rookie drafts. Um, I think he's worth it here. I think he could, have a solid career. This is one of those guys where it's like he doesn't have a lot of tape, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's like, he's not good. It's just like, look, he had the best player in front of him. So I really think maybe now's the time to buy on Jadarian Price. Going to an elite off. I mean, what more could you want from an offense? Um, and they're gonna work him in. He's got the job. Like he's gonna have the keys. Until Charbonnet gets back off that ACL. Uh, you know, they're looking to use him. If they're gonna pay him all this for a first round pick, they're gonna use him. I say we go for it here. All right, this is the honorable mentions. I'm not getting into all these crazy guys, these bozos. But just a couple of guys I wanted to rattle off before the video ends. Carson Beck going to the Arizona Cardinals. I think that'll be interesting. They obviously need a quarterback. I don't know if Carson Beck's going to be that for them long term. Uh, Georgia for a long time, and he was okay. And then Miami, he was able to make Natty. But the old number 1 overall, who we did not talk about in this video, because obviously you knew he was going to the Raiders, and kudos to Oakland, or sorry Vegas, man, that's ball knowledge right there. Kudos to them for getting, hopefully their franchise Q. Malachi Fields going to the Giants. I think that's going to be really interesting with Vondell leaving, having neighbors there with Malachi Fields. I would be watching out for that. Zachariah Branch, he honestly dropped really far in the draft just because of the arrest, which if you read it, he he was on this, he just got arrested for standing on the sidewalk. It's the craziest thing. Go read it if you haven't read it. But him going to the Falcons, I think that could be really interesting, pairing up with Drake London, with Bijan, and then Penix. Once he's coming back off injury, I don't know if he'll be good, but I think that could be scary to watch. So I would honestly love to see that. I think that he'll be a sleeper. Jacoby Lane, don't know much about this guy, but I'm just a fan. Go watch the tapes. Chris Brazzell, I think he's the Dolphins, if I'm right. Um, Not really remembering well, but I mean, this is the honorable mentions. I think he's an elite prospect. I, I don't think he's a top tier guy like the ones we actually got the pictures of. So take a grain of salt with that. But these are some names to watch out for, maybe in your second or third rounds of those drafts. Ted Hurst going to the Buccaneers. That is a crowded room, but the Bake Show is a guy that can dish it out. And you got to remember, Tampa usually struggles with a lot of injuries. So it wouldn't be bad, to kind of have a guy like Ted Hurst. So, there's a good potential chance that he's going to be maybe a wide receiver too, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at some point this season, just with the way they sadly sustain injuries so often. And then Chris Bell, I think Chris Bell went to the Dolphins if I'm remembering correctly. Um, I think he's going to have a lot to prove, coming off of ACL, I believe. But who else is he going to have to beat out in practice to kind of get that wide receiver one spot? Malik Washington, I'm not scared of him. I think this is going to be a great landing spot for him. Malik Willis is going to be slinging the ball to absolutely nobody. So just giving him a rookie, say here's some fresh meat, have at it. I think there's potential there. I think he could. There's potential for him to be a sleeper, and people will say buy him later on in the year. I'm saying buy him now if you can. So with that, that marks the first ever video of fantasy R&D. Hope you liked it. Um, please leave a comment if you enjoyed. Please comment below. What do you think? You think these picks are wild? What are these GMs thinking? Who's your fantasy sleeper for this year? Let me know in the comments and catch me in the next video. All right.